The leadership development news, profiles and practices of top performers. I'm Dr. Roy Nadler, Dr. Kathy Greenberg, and I have been doing this since 2008. And we used to be called a radio show. Now we're a podcast. We've been rated #1 in leadership development news on FeedSpot. So we're glad to bring you tips, tools that will help you and help your team be top 10% performers. We like to use the emotional intelligence model, one, because it has great research. Two, there's a lot of tools and techniques that Kathy and I use and created to have people in the top 10%. That top 10% is a tipping point. If you get you or your team more into the top 10%, you are able to be more effective, more productive. It's going to help with engagement, all the things that we want to do, as a leader. And today, we have the opportunity to talk with Will Linson. And he's going to walk through the title of this is Leading at Scale, Evolving Leadership for Hypergrowth. Kathy's going to introduce him in a moment, but let me bring on my esteemed co-host, Dr. Kathy Greenberg.
Thanks, really. Whenever you talk about how long we've been on the air, and it's so funny, we just finished our third first responder coach certification class, University of Massachusetts. And I just feel so old. And I keep saying to everybody, I am definitely an OG. And they're like, old guard. And I'm like, no, old gangster, like truly old gangster of coaching. Been around since dirt. It's so much fun. We have worked with some of the most phenomenal people in the world. And I think today is going to be no exception. So I'm really excited about what we're going to learn today from our guests and some of the things that they have been doing around the world to do something that we love, which is to foster and promote growth among our colleagues and those that we support. So I'm happy to get started. Now, I know we have been getting a lot of new viewers. And I think everybody is going crazy with SEO these days, trying to grab viewers. Our problem is we have too many viewers. And I'm only
Bad
saying,
problem to have, yeah.
yeah, best problem to have. And so I just want to put a word out there to all of you SEO folks out there that are just pummeling my email. If you haven't taken a look at what we do and you think we're new to this business, all I ask you to do is please take a look at the success that we've had with this show for 20 years. And if you'd like to use this as a role model for your community and your constituents, we'd love to talk to you, but we're not interested in buying SEO. So for those of you who are listening today, you're going to hear a lot about what it takes to be a great coach, why we've been so successful at this for so many years, and we're ranked the #1 leadership development podcast, on the air now for several years, and we're just so delighted to be here. And really, I can't thank you enough for all the great years we've been together as we start a new year.
This is always fun for us. It's unpredictable, but that makes it kind of fun. And then we're going to pick Will Linson's brain here. He's been doing this for quite a while. And let
Yep.
me just say one or two things, and then we're going to bring his bio on. But a couple things, if you're listening, and I've been playing with this concept of this idea of how much effort does a leader give, and then what's the impact? It's usually little effort, huge impact. They don't realize that. It's not one for one. And so I'm playing with a formula on this. But part of that is, are you recognizing good work? A lot of leaders are saying they are. That would be on the effort side. Probably a couple sentences, major impact. Are you providing daily feedback? Low on effort, high on impact. So with that, these are some of the tips, and then we're going to jump into Will Linson. So Kat, why don't you tell our audience who he is? He's got a great background.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. Well, Will Linson is a globally recognized leadership coach and a #1 Amazon international bestselling author. He's been named the world's #1 leadership coach by Global Gurus and a #1 coach trainer by Thinkers 50, recognized as a LinkedIn top voice in executive coaching, and serves as an advisor to Harvard Business Review, where he continues to shape the global conversation on leadership development, coaching, and of course, performance growth. He's also a master certified coach with ICF, and he is the CEO of Global Coach Group. He is, he's a trainer and he has certified well over 4,000 executive coaches and coach leaders from hypergrowth startups to Fortune 500 companies, including global organizations like LinkedIn and Coca-Cola, Mercedes-Benz, Saudi America or Aramco, excuse me, and Samsung across the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Australia. And I'm sure we'll get back to that Saudi company. You can correct me on that one, Will. He has a great book out called Triple Win Leadership Coaching, and he's going to talk about this 95% success rate that he's able to get by developing great leaders. And we're going to get more into some of these statistics. A lot of it is backed by data from well over 100,000 leaders, and it provides a structured, measurable, and scalable method for creating lasting leadership change and performance. And I'm really excited today because, of course, my work with Marshall Goldsmith that launched back in 2003, Global Leadership Next Generation. At the time, we had the largest population, well over 100,000 leaders that we interviewed and got 5 key character traits that have been in existence to this day. And now I'm working on a new book called Global Leadership Future Proof with a handful of global leaders from around the world. So I'm very excited to hear about today's show. So welcome to the show, Will.
Well, thanks for having me. And it sounds like a great setup for a great conversation. So let's get started.
All right. So, Will, we always ask this question, but I'm really curious, kind of with your global background. First, some of your major influences. And then how'd you get into coaching? So there's really 2 aspects. So you can start with influences, and then where did the coaching come online? So
yeah, that actually came very kind of natural. But let me start with the great influencers as people over time. Stephen Covey, who created 7 Habits, I think was the first one that really influenced me strongly. I had also the pleasure to meet him a number of times, including some of his sons, David and the other Stephen, MR. Daniel Goleman, EI, a great person that influenced me early on with his emotional intelligence research and publications. Marshall Goldsmith, very obviously. And last but not least, David Meister, who has this book around the trust equation and really kind of created math around how do you create a trusted service. And then people who are more in industry, which I would call kind of authentic, very high achieving leaders. First off, Bill George, who was CEO of Medtronic at that time. I was doing my MBA and he was there doing a lot of teaching. So yeah, amazing, very inspiring. And he just got his book True North out at that time. So very inspiring, but also kind of real stuff, right? Not theoretical. It's like, people who run businesses in the real way, in that way. Alan Mulally, former CEO of Ford, amongst others, amazing person that I had the blessing to spend quite some time with. But also other people, Sadhguru, the founder of the Isha Foundation, which is probably the largest foundation in the world in India or out of India. And last but not least, Muhammad Yunus. He was the founder of the Grameen Bank and the inventor of microfinance, and currently the president of Bangladesh. Amazing people. And these people really know how to marry up meaning in terms of results and achievement, but also meaning in terms of touching people that everybody just moves better, faster together. And that is an art.
No, absolutely. It sounds like if we were on the air for any longer, that we'd probably grow a list of a common network that we could actually, share some insider stories on. But I think what I'd like to talk about right now is what inspired you to develop this triple win leadership coaching model.
Yeah, it was actually born out of frustration in a way. I mean, I was at the end of the 90s and early 2000s, I was the CEO of a number of companies, kind of regional or head of country CEO. And yeah, we had a number of people being coached, myself, some people on my team, my manager, and spending a lot of money on all that stuff, and you see that people kind of get wiser and smarter, but the impact is missing, right? So it's basically, why are we doing this, right? And to coach people just for them to kind of feel better about it and have more wisdom is one thing, but if it's not converted into results and impact and engagement, then why, right? So I felt like, yeah, that's just not right. And while I was doing my MBA as running companies at the same time, I just saw a number of great examples of how General Electric and HP and Microsoft were doing their development and really created and married up that whole understanding of coaching and leadership, where leaders are held to account not only to improve results, but also to improve people at the same time. I think Jack Welch had always this kind of and approach to things, which makes it not easier, but it's like necessary. So I thought, yeah, there is a way out there to do it. So now get out and do it, because as a head of the company, and again, inspired by how Jack Welch thought about things, it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, as a CEO, you're not there to improve plastics or pharma or chemicals in my case, but you're there to help leaders to be more effective with their teams. So you're basically a people multiplier in a way, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, if that's what you're really excited about, then you shouldn't be in plastics and chemicals and pharmaceuticals. You need to be in the people business. So I thought, hey, I'll start doing that, because I got my first certifications with Stephen Covey while I was still working in the company, and I was doing some other training at that point. I thought, yeah, just do that, and that's great.
Yeah.
I stepped out, and I thought, I'll just give it a shot. One of my American bosses always said, well, once you get to go to hell money, then tell everybody to go to hell and do whatever you want to do. That was the point.
That sounds like one of my most wonderful mentors, in addition to Warren Bennis, Noel Tishy, out of University of Michigan. And of course, he was a huge influence on Jack Welch and his education center, and helped to design that. So I can hear them in the background saying all those things, which we can't say anymore.
Yeah.
So, Will, for everybody can see it, you can see his book back there, Triple Win Leadership Coaching. So what are the triple wins? And then we'll kind of follow up on some of the other ways to pick your brain. So what is the triple win?
Yeah, so the triple win, as a leadership coach, what you want to achieve is the triple win of creating a better leader, creating a better team, and creating better results all at the same time. Yeah. And so we figured out the way over time, also with trial and error and engineering and reverse engineering, to get to a 95% success rate, to coach a leader for 6, 9, or 12 months, and then get a 95% success rate that coworkers confirm that the leader has become more successful, that the team has become more effective, and that the results have become better. So get better at all three. And that's the success formula, right? Because leadership is not about the leader. It's really about co-creating change with coworkers in order to get better results.
No, absolutely. I think it's important for people to understand some distinctions, though, because a lot of people worked on something called the triple bottom line in the mid 2000s. That was something that I know Bristol Myers Squibb and many other global companies were paying attention to, especially in the pharma world. And I want to make sure our audience hears the difference, right? So when we think about that triple bottom line, we were talking about what's good for the company, what's good for the constituents, and then what's good for the planet. And I think what's really very unique about this triple win leadership coaching program is that you get that 95% result across the leadership's behavior, which impacts the culture and obviously the team. And then obviously, as you just said, the productivity and performance of that organization in their industry. So I love it. I think it's very powerful. And I'm very excited to learn more about it.
So one of the things, Will, we're going to go to a break in just a couple minutes. But so how do you measure that? And I love that you're saying that it's from the coworkers, because that really is huge if not only the individual sees the change, but other people say it. So yeah, maybe just kind of highlight that. How do you measure it?
Yeah, so let me share this in a nutshell, and then after the break, maybe we can dive into it a
Right.
little deeper. So the key is that as coworkers are involved and basically on a quarterly basis assessing, hey, did the leader get better? Did the team get better? Did the results get better? So coworkers are involved, but also coworkers now become accountable. They realize, yeah, leadership is not just about the leader, it's also about us. So if the leader gets better, that's great, but we also need to get better, else it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So they become involved, but now they become accountable. And as they become accountable, they co-create, they work together, and they move the needle on results. Now, there are a few more intricacies to it, which I'm happy to obviously dive into, but that's the gist of it. Make sure that the leader works together with the coworkers around this and that they're really heavily involved so that they become accountable.
You know, one of the things we talk a lot about in leadership are the measures of accountability, right? And when Relly opened the show up, he talked about balancing effort with performance and outcome. And I think that that's something that I know our audience would like to learn a lot more about. So when we come back from this break, I'm thinking of food. I'm so hungry right now. Everything is. So after I have my grape during the break, we're going to come back and talk more about how does the triple win support business performance and changing the way you coach forever. So don't go away. Come right back. You're listening to Leadership Development News.
Welcome back to Leadership Development News. We're talking with Will Linson. If you want more information from him, his website is globalcoachgroup.com. And then you can reach him at Will, W-I-L-L, Linson is Linssen at globalcoach.com. And so, Will, we just were before the break talking about the measurement that you have, and you talked about doing it quarterly, and really it's not only the individual, which is fine. I've made changes, but you really can ground that. And we all know about the self-report, supposedly when you talk about self-awareness, some of the research of Tara Urick, we all think we're self-aware, 75, 80%. And I'm not sure how she saw that, but it's more like 10 or 15% of us are really aware. So yeah, I'm curious about that piece of it and how you get that feedback.
So let's start at the beginning on what to measure, how to measure, right? So so the key to triple win is for the leader to choose something that they want to get better at, let's say more effective decision making, yeah, and pick something that's important to them as a leader, so they want to invest in it, but also pick something that is really important to their coworkers because it is also of value to them, yeah. So that's key. Then create that business case with the leader, because the leader needs to see it's not just about one thing, it's about a lot of things. If I get better at one thing, I have like a whole load of other benefits that I get better at. If I get better at one thing, there's a lot of benefits that my coworkers are going to get. So it's a really big thing. You have a lot of kind of spin-off and cascading effect that one needs to realize. So the more I focus on the right thing to get better at, the more I see that those cascading effects are real. So now I have a very, let's call it a meaty development area that I want to get better at, that I care about and my coworkers care about. Now already I have automatic buy-in from coworkers, right? Because they feel like, yeah, if you get better at more effective decision-making and we get more involved, yeah, I'm signing up for that. That sounds like a great deal. So how can I help? So then the leader is asking for suggestions in how they can do that. So these are short-term suggestions, right? So some people might say, well, before we make a decision, make sure that you ask most, if not all people in the team up front what their thinking is, right? So ask for the voices, right? And then rather than making this a democracy, somebody else might say, rather than make it as a democracy, make sure that the people who are going to be impacted by those decisions, that they have a real vote, right? Because at the end of the day, they have to carry the weight of that amazing decision. And then somebody else might say, yeah, that's all nice and fine, but at the end of the day, we also need to make this effective. So don't hesitate that if there is no clear surfacing of what the decision should be, don't hesitate to step in and make a choice as a leader based on what you see is the best way forward. And then we're all going to be falling in line with that. I don't think that's going to be a problem. If you ask everybody and the most important people, they can cast their vote. And if you then kind of put in the casting vote, then we should be able to move forward. So asking those suggestions, make an action plan, implement the action plan, and then on a quarterly basis, ask people how they have seen that the leader has gotten better. So that's a satisfaction scale rating, right? So how satisfied are you? Not at all, to excellent, very satisfied. Yeah? So yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as you're talking about these things, and I know you have many case studies. Maybe you could talk a little bit about an actual experience. I know on this one you're using decision making as the hypothetical. Maybe you could apply some of the things that actually occurred that were distinctively performance related, that had a significant impact, right, on the bottom line.
On the bottom line, yeah. So here's a very specific example around this cross-functional collaboration. So this was actually where we're coaching the CEO and their whole executive team, and they decided together to all focus on, so these were 11 people, they all focused on cross-functional collaboration, and everybody also picked their own leadership growth area as well. So some people were about decision-making, other people about empowerment or collaborative execution, whatever the case may be. And let's focus with cross-functional collaboration. So they picked this because literally they wanted to double their market share in 2 years with the organization. Yeah? So this was a hypergrowth startup company that really was already quite well established, but they're like, yeah, we really need to kind of make a dent because in 2 years we're running out of runway, and if we have a double market share, we're going to be really happy, and if we don't have that, we're going to be seriously sad. So that was their objective. So very clear. So we translated double market share in actual sales, yeah, actually in unit of sales. So we didn't talk about numbers in terms of revenue, but more in SKU units. And then every month, literally, they have their own reporting and accounting system. So for us, it's very easy. It's like, yeah, we'll put the SKUs together. You have your budget, you have your strategy plan, you have the execution train. So that's how we're going to measure how success looks like in terms of results. Yeah, and then collaboration across functions, all the coworkers, so their peers in the executive team, and all their direct reports for each individual executive on a quarterly basis were reporting back on their satisfaction on how cross-functional collaboration worked. Yeah. And each individual executive had their own report card in a way. So that made it really very kind of easy, but also clear. And everybody stepped up, right? Everybody's like, yeah, I don't want to stand in our executive team meeting every quarter and talk about my report card. That's not so great as the other report cards. So part of the logic is that leadership behavior is not confidential, right? Leadership behavior is out there. Everybody sees what you do every day, all day. So that also means that the feedback that we do every quarter, the report as such is confidential for the leader and goes to their manager as well. But to talk about it is not confidential because it's out there. People have seen it, right? So you need to kind of have the humility, but also the confidence and the courage to stand up there and talk about your leadership.
Beautiful.
That's a great model. And I think, both Kathy and I, we've done similar things in organizations. Just having people share what they want to work on opens up some of the vulnerability. It has, other kind of buzzwords. They got to trust, to have psychological safety. But if everybody is doing that, it can really move forward, and then you tying it to kind of a bottom line piece that they want.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, an organization exists for some kind of bottom line, right? Whether it's revenue or profit or earnings per share, that could be one result, or other KPIs like market share, or even kind of social or nonprofit organizations who have other. But everybody has KPIs nowadays, or OKRs, whatever we call these things. Yeah.
No, definitely. One of the things that I'm hearing from both of you is this underlying foundation of trust. And one of the things that Matthew and I work on, my husband, because he came from SEAL Team 6, where they designed that performance metric around trust that Simon Sinek has actually created a video clip around. That actually came from my husband, Matt, and a colleague of his at SEAL Team 6 when they were trying to rebuild trust after the Osama bin Laden mission. And, I'm really curious, in his language, trust comes from capability and performance over time, right? So you have to have the capability and demonstrate the capability in your performance over time for people to trust you. How do you build this trust that supports the triple win for business performance?
So, yeah, the simple version of that is that if the leader chooses something that they want to really get better at, that means they have some level of competence, but that competence needs to be improved. Yeah? Let's stick with cross-functional collaboration. And their coworkers also have some capability and further want to improve the capability, because cross-functional collaboration is not something the leader does on their own. So people kind of admit that, yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm good or okay, but I want to get better, because that's what I need and what we all need. So you know what? I'm not perfect, and I recognize that, but I can help you, you can help me. Together, we can get better at this. And it's not rocket science. It's really about finding the way how we can do this together and figuring it out and finding the way forward. And then as we found that way forward, we need to institutionalize that way, right? So that means from behaviors into habits to what I call mini process. And that is then anchored in the culture, or maybe an SOP, kind of was a standard of operation. And now we're done, right? And that takes some time. But so trust is basically reliability of behaviors, which is either hardwired or softwired.
So with that, I got a question that will be kind of following up on that. So trust that leads to habits. What would you say are the habits that define most effective leaders? If you had to kind of give your bucket of, these habits. I know we zoomed in, which was really good about measurement. Now we're kind of zooming out a little bit. What would be the common effective habits any leader listening should have?
So, yeah, obviously that can be a very long list, but I'll just kind of share what I think the essence of that is.
Great.
So leaders who are we-centered and have we-centeredness in their behavior, that's the essence of it all. And the more we are we-centered, we will always be enough me-centered, right? No leader goes home, or no parent comes home and people at home saying, well, I think you should be a little bit more me-centered because you're putting yourself last too much all the time. It's like, yeah, that doesn't happen too often, right? So if leaders in the company are just more we-centered in the way they empower, in the way they delegate, in the way they communicate, in the way they decide, in the way they coach people, right? That is really the key. And some of these things that need to happen more, and great leaders are really good at, is, for instance, coaching for results and development, right? One of the lowest ranked items in all the surveys we have been doing with more than 120,000 leaders around the world is coaching for development is one of the lowest items that leaders score on, which is basically sad, if not worse than sad.
It's funny, we're talking about trust, and we're talking about business, and we're talking about measurements. And as a behavioral scientist with a evolutionary biology foundation, having worked with primates for many, many years before I worked with leaders, which I always find very humorous. There's this rule of 150 that comes up in the world of science. And the rule of 150 is that generally speaking, the higher we are in our development as a species in the food chain, it appears the less time its members need to kind of spend time together. Isn't that interesting? And so there's been research that shows that the minimum amount of time that we need to spend time together is about 42% of our time in social networks, just to be able to trust each other, to be able to have the kind of performance that we need as a team, whether it's as a leader or in an organization. I'm curious, looking at the Triple Win foundations and looking at the leadership coaching around this whole business model, is there a lot of, I'll say, social science that has gone into some of what you've been doing around, these leadership questions and team questions to help support behavioral change? Because one of the things I focus on in my work across military and law enforcement, obviously, big government like FBI, HSI, so forth and so on. And of course, with ICE getting a lot of attention right now, we pay a lot of attention to this. When we look at how leaders are outgrowing their identities, we are teaching now through the National Command and Staff College these programs called MAP. And in MAP, we teach what's called the elasticity of identity. And so when we think of what leaders need to do to be good coaches, to be good performers, to be good communicators, to be good cultural creators, can you think, and we have, a little bit of time here to come back to this as well after the break. Can you think about some of these behaviors that you believe leaders really have to have in order to even contribute to this triple win process?
So I think the biggest thing that gets in the way of leaders is their ego, right? And the biggest thing that leaders have a challenge with in putting aside is also their ego. And I always tell leaders, you don't have to change your ego or change your values or change your character, but you just have to use it less, right? So the definition of humility is not thinking about yourself less, but thinking about yourself less often. So as a leader, if you can be able to set aside yourself and just think about or focus on we and step into the leader that people need to have for them to do their job well as an individual, that's what it is. And as I'm talking about this, that reminds me of Alan Mullally's thinking that every day he walks into the Ford Motor Company's offices, he's like, okay, Alan, now leave Alan behind, right? And step into the office as the person that people need for the president of the company to perform well and for them to perform well in their functions. So be that person. Alan, have a nice day, right? So that stepping up to the stage and perform the way you need to perform. So that's very much that we-centered, step away from the ego and do it.
In psychology, they call that kind of theory of mind, which is kind of the empathy. What's going on for people? Who do they want to show up? And so just that thought, we're all entranced and intrigued with AI. Are we giving each other the right prompts? I wonder what they want from me versus what I want from them. Just that alone is going to help our leaders.
Oh, absolutely. And, I deal with a very unique population because actually when we have leaders that are too self-engrossed. They can't understand what's going on in their environment. When they can't understand what's going on in their environment, and we have an environment that is very volatile, like we have right now going around the country with law enforcement, we have to really recognize that individuals can't do what they need to do for self-care. They can't have psychological safety that will give them a sense of having empathy towards themselves. And then what they do is they work too hard in that industry. I'm talking about the public safety industry. And essentially they burn out because they're putting in too many hours without the self-care.
Recharge.
So, yeah, without recharging. So we're going to take a quick break. And this has been an amazing conversation. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I know when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you want to make sure our audience get from this conversation today, Will. But we're going to just take a quick break. And for all of you that are listening, I want you to think about when you are doing you, and when you are doing your business, and when you are doing you as a coach, what kind of elasticity in your identity are you actually practicing that you can build on to make a better version of you? We'll be right back. Don't go away. You're listening to Leadership Development News. Welcome back to Leadership Development News. We've been having a delightful conversation with the author of Triple Win Leadership Coaching, Will Linson, and my favorite coach in the whole wide world, Relly Nadler. And I just want to make sure that everybody is tracking to some of the excitement that I'm having, at least around these concepts. And I think, Relly, when we were on break, you had a fascinating question that we wanted to start off this segment with. And I may have to jump off because I'm on my way to the airport, but I'm loving this conversation and I'm going to keep listening.
Okay. So, Will, I think, we're not going to hit to everything, but I think, it sounds like there was a leadership moment that changed the way you coach. Now, coaching, but I'm sure you're also coaching leaders. So what is that moment?
Yeah, so when I was, this is pretty much earlier on in my career of coaching that I thought, oh my goodness, I'm coaching. So there's this leader contracted me to coach one of his direct reports for succession into his role as a regional CEO. And, I was coaching this person and great strides forward. And then kind of halfway through, I realized, oh my goodness, this manager is totally undermining the coaching process for this leader to succeed. And I thought, oh my goodness, how does this even work? How does it even make sense, right? Where somebody is hiring a coach to genuinely help one of their direct reports improve to be succession ready for their next role, and then they undermined it. So I thought, yeah, that can't happen. You really need to kind of tighten up the process to make sure that your results are guaranteed, that we're agreeing, because elsewhere you're delivering a service that fizzles out. So that was really something that changed the way I coached forever.
Okay. And so that may be on the coaching side of things. When do we challenge and when do we try to give them, a different way of looking at things? Sometimes I'm sure in your coaching school and the ones that I'm with, it's around listening and being good about that. Sometimes the challenging of that doesn't get enough attention. So it sounds like in that situation, you realize, okay, I got to really challenge what they're doing here.
So there are two answers to your question. So one is, what I changed as a coach is realizing, I really need to assess the coachability of the leader up front better, to have somebody who really wants to get better. I have to assess the commitment of the manager more accurately so that you can always kind of take that back to that commitment from the beginning. And then I realized that more structure in the coaching process, actually structure creates freedom. It's like an agile adaptation process. So these are the three things that I thought, yeah, that needs to change. Now, having changed that, and then how do you then challenge leaders in the coaching process to kind of step up and work through some things? that is actually where the whole coworker input creates such magic, because when the leader is working on, let's go back to our example, cross-functional collaboration, then it's like, okay, let's make an action plan based on what your coworker suggests, right? Let's go with that first. Now, you don't have to do what they're saying or want you to do, but at least you have to consider some of them and do some stuff around that. So coworkers first. Hey, leader, you might have a few good ideas to put in the action plan. And last but not least, I might have a few good ideas too. And I can easily now challenge the leader on, well, you get a suggestion around cross-functional collaboration. Be more proactive in reaching out to people across the supply chain to understand what they want at an early stage. And you can push back on that. But if you don't do something about it, right, then you will never solve this problem, because that's the problem they exactly bring to you. And you can either evidence that you do something about it, or you can evidence that you decided not to do something about it. So what's the choice you want to make now, right? So by bringing in that coworker input really helps you as a coach, what I call to be the ambassador of the coworkers at the coaching table with a leader. And that's a very powerful position to have.
And you said you would be the ambassador of the coworkers. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. As a coach, you are the ambassador of the coworkers at the table with the leader.
And what I also like is then the direct reports are saying, here's what I need. I often would use that question in more of a facilitated manner. What do you need from your leader to be your best? And then that's similar to what you're saying. That's their checklist. And then you can bring that in to them, and sometimes it is a challenge. Are you doing that? So I think in the coaching world, trying to get more metrics, and you actually have them in what you're doing, with the return on investment to ROI. That's huge.
So sometimes leaders, they push back on the coworker involvement piece, right? You tell them, well, when you talk about metrics, you say, well, if you involve coworkers in your coaching process, 95% chance you have to get better at the end of the year, and everybody is recognizing that. And if you don't involve them, you have actually 18% chance that people are satisfied with your improvement. So your input is going to be exactly the same, because you're not going to spend more or less hours doing anything. So what metric do you want to shoot for, the 95% or the 18%?
And as the 18% is if they don't do anything, where'd the 18% come from?
Well, the 18% is that they do the coaching and they have action plans and they do things, but they don't involve coworkers. That basically means they do whatever they want to do based on their insights.
And then they're measuring themselves. And we talked about the whole idea of kind of the self-report, which is important. So when you think about leaders and anything, we talked about this a little bit in the break, you're involved with a lot of different countries. Is there cultural differences? And like when you're training your coaches, is there like a sensitivity to different cultures, or is it kind of more we're all humans and there are going to be similar things that we're going to zero in on?
Yeah, let's talk about when I'm coaching leaders, right? And then how you train coaches is kind of derived from that. So I've been coaching leaders from literally North, South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, so pretty much all over the world, even including some countries in Africa. And interestingly, in our current world of diversity, right, there is very, very little pure play at work, right? So most work environments have a lot of international groupings where there are remote teams, there are expatriates, there are locals. The US, I think, is a great example. You have a lot of people who maybe have an American passport, but their ethnicity is very different, right? So my experience is that as human beings, we have much more in common than our passports divide us. And diversity, I see much more in terms of people's educational background, or how people grew up in their specific setting, which is maybe culture, but it can also be religion or other aspects. And also people, the kind of industry people grew up in, right? Whether you grew up in fast-moving consumer goods or high tech or government organization, that drives a lot more how leaders and people work together than the typical aspects that we use as culture.
So that makes a lot of sense. In your coaching school, are you educating them about the different cultures, or they do that on their own? Because I know typically it probably should be some of the coaching conversation, so I don't necessarily need all the background. I would say you're a person of different color than I am, and tell me about that. And then in the coaching conversation, we'll be asking about some of their how they grew up and are there kind of beliefs and things that inform the coach in the coaching session.
Yeah, exactly. For instance, so where the differences come up are as follows. If you ask the leader, what do you want to achieve? Well, I want to achieve that we execute faster, or that people are more respectful in the way they communicate, whatever their objective is. Then, okay, that's the principle, or that's the goal we have. Now, how would you like to achieve that? How would your coworkers like to achieve that? And now we go into behavior that is much more culturally sensitive, and much more cultural adapt. And as you involve coworkers and provide that and ask them for input and suggestions, you get what I call an autocorrect for culture. People will say what they need in order to get what they need in order to do their job better. Yeah. So that solves itself if you start with the right subjects and ask the right questions.
We got just now, maybe 3 minutes. So this is part of our lightning round. I'm going to include some of your questions. So what's one question that every manager should ask?
Yeah, so every manager should ask their coworker, their team members, what can I do to help you to achieve your goals faster and develop yourself?
Yeah. And as we know, that's going to be in one-on-ones. There's a lot of research from Gallup and others, how vital, and I talk about your power stance is in your one-on-ones. And if you're not having those one-on-ones where you can ask those questions, Will, that you're talking about. The other interesting thing is CEOs outgrow their leadership style. What made them successful, and how do they adapt? That may be the elasticity that Kathy was talking about.
Mm-hmm. I think what I see is that as leaders get to very high levels in the organization, then most things they do well or well enough. But it's a few things that get in their way. It's maybe listening, it's maybe not helping people to speak up, or whatever the case may be. So it's the small things that become big things when people get high up in the organization, and that gets in the way. And these behaviors were excusable when they were younger and junior, but now they just get much more of an issue.
And that's where I talk to leaders. Everything they do and say is under the spotlight. So even though it's a minor thing, it gets exaggerated. So, all right. So a couple quick things that we're going to end and just fill in the blank. Leadership is
co-creating change with coworkers. Leadership is not about the leader. It's about the people they lead. Right.
And at work, it's all about?
Work is all about meaning. It's all about memories. And let's not forget, money is also important.
Okay. And then the last one, what do you do to recharge during the day, during the work day?
Yeah, I'm a very digital on and off person. So I kind of check my energy levels throughout the day and do things that match my energy level. Like this afternoon, I felt that, that's already, I started very early, so there was a lot of energy already gone. And I felt, I'm going to do some work on our new e-learning platform because that's where I have energy for.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. All right. Will Linson, and you want more information from Will? It's globalcoachgroup.com. He's got a great website. There's a lot of information on there. And really, thank you so much for doing this. And the triple win is his book. You see that? Leadership Coaching. So thank you, Will. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the conversation.